All right, now back to the debate and those events and those exchanges that got a lot of press, a lot of attention, including this one involving former New Jersey Governor Chris Christie. Take a look.
Whether or not you believe that the criminal charges are right or wrong, the conduct is beneath the office of President of the United States. And you know, this is the great thing about this country. Booing is allowed, but it doesn't change the truth. It doesn't change the truth.
Chris Christie, honest to God, your claim that Donald Trump is motivated by vengeance and grievance would be a lot more credible if your entire campaign were not based on vengeance and grievance against one man. And if people at home want to see a bunch of people blindly bashing Donald Trump without an iota of vision for this country, they could just change the channel to MSNBC right now.
All right, there was a lot more like that. With us now, the aforementioned governor of the state of New Jersey for 2 very successful terms, Chris Christie, with us now. Governor, good to have you.
Thanks. Great to be here, Neil.
The booing part of that you received, were you expecting that?
Sure. Yeah, look, you know, you go into a debate hall, a big debate hall like that, and you're going to say hard truths about the former nominee of the party. And so there are going to be some people in there who are upset about that. They don't want to hear those truths. But the truths need to be heard, and they need to be spoken. Because here's the problem, Neil, and this is what those folks need to understand, that in a few hours, Donald Trump will be out on bail in 4 different jurisdictions. And if that's the person that we think can beat Joe Biden, we're kidding ourselves. You're not going to do that. He'll probably be on trial in at least 2 of those cases between now and Election Day of 2024. And Joe Biden is begging for Donald Trump. And I think what I tried to show folks last night was I'm willing to tell the truth about Donald Trump. I'm willing to tell the truth about Joe and Hunter Biden. And I have a record from being elected and reelected in a blue state, defeating a Democrat incumbent. I was the only person on that stage last night who's ever defeated a Democratic incumbent. And the last Democratic incumbent president who was defeated was Jimmy Carter. And you know who beat him? A conservative governor from a blue state named Ronald Reagan. And that's the same type of win I want to bring back in 24. But Donald Trump won't bring it to us. Someone needs to say it, so I did.
You got a lot of people booing you, and unlike Ronald Reagan, the example, he was not booed by many in his own party at the time. Did you get a sense with that exchange, Governor, that you don't have a chance at this nomination?
Not at all. And in fact, look, the Hall is a small group of people compared to our Republican Party across the country. And that's why, you know, Neil, if you look at the newest poll that's come out of New Hampshire just 3 days ago, I'm now comfortably in second place at 14% of the vote, clear by margin of error past Vivek Ramaswamy, who's in second or third place, and 5 points ahead of Ron DeSantis, who's now at 9%. Now, we have a ways to go. We still have 20 points to catch up to Donald Trump. But I've only been in this race for 2.5 months. And I've gone from 0 to 14 in New Hampshire. So I'm not discouraged at all. I'm incredibly encouraged. And let's face it, who was booing me in the crowd last night? You know, some of the folks who were doing the loudest booing are the people who are invested in the swamp that Donald Trump helped to create for them in Washington, D.C. He said he was going to drain the swamp. And all he did was rearrange it. And rearrange it so that members of his own family could do the same things that Hunter Biden and other members of the Biden family are doing right now. Here's the promise I'll make to the American people. There'll be no members of the Christie family in government when I'm president, and there'll be no members of the Christie family who will profit from my government service. And neither Joe Biden nor Donald Trump can say that about their families.
You know, you did get quite a bit of applause as well, and I want to be fair in that regard, Governor. But you also removed any doubt that you had serious doubts about supporting Donald Trump should he become the nominee. Is it that unequivocal, or did I conclude too much?
Oh, the question was if he's a convicted felon, would I want to support him? I don't believe it's right for a convicted felon to be the president of the United States. Now, he's presumed innocent in all 4 of these cases, and the government is going to have to come forward in any one of them and be able to prove their case to a jury of his peers beyond a reasonable doubt, as I did for 7 years as U.S. Attorney in New Jersey. And in political corruption cases like this one, I was 130-0. So I know what these cases look like. I know the burden you have to meet. And what we were asked very specifically last night by Brett Baer and Martha McCallum was if he was in fact convicted. And I don't think any Republican should want our standard bearer, let alone our President of the United States, to be a convicted felon.
You know, you mentioned Donald Trump, Governor, and he declared Ramaswamy the debate winner for, among other reasons, calling Donald Trump the best president of the 21st century. He did not make any reference to you.
Well, I'm stunned that as I was talking about Donald Trump and all the ways that he's let down our party and our country, that he didn't mention me as a winner of the debate last night. But, you know, if Vivek thinks that Donald Trump is the greatest president of the 21st century, what the hell is he doing running? He should drop out tomorrow.
Yeah, let me ask you a little bit about that, too. Another issue came up where you and you know, Vivek Ramaswamy came to blows is on the issue of Ukraine. I want you to respond to this, Governor.
I find it offensive that we have professional politicians on the stage that will make a pilgrimage to Kyiv, to their Pope, Zelensky, without doing the same thing for people in Maui or the south side of Chicago or Kensington. I think that we have to put the interests of Americans first, secure our own border instead of somebody else's.
I did go to Ukraine, and I went to Ukraine because I wanted to see for myself what Vladimir Putin's army was doing to the free Ukrainian people. This is the Vladimir Putin who Donald Trump called brilliant and a genius. If we don't stand up against this type of autocratic killing in the world, we will be next.
It just got me thinking, Governor, would you support Vivek Ramaswamy, given some of those views that are diametrically opposed to yours, if he were the party's nominee?
Let me just say this, Neil. I don't think there's any risk of having to make that judgment. I think what he showed last night is that this is a guy, like I said, who's a group of chat GPT phrases strung together to try to get the rise out of a crowd, but has absolutely no idea what he's talking about. This is a guy who says, let's get rid of Taiwan to the Chinese by 2028. Let's treat Israel like every other country in the Middle East. And by the way, when he was attacking me about telling the truth about Donald Trump, in his own book, he said that what Donald Trump did on January 6th was reprehensible, plain and simple. Direct quote from the book. And when I confronted him with that last night, he said, I never said that. No, you didn't. You wrote it, or the ghostwriter who wrote your book wrote it. But either way, your name was on it. So I don't think I'm ever going to have to confront that question, Neil. I don't think there's any chance of that happening.
All right. By the way, I did check his book, and you were right about that. He said exactly that. Let me get your view, Governor, then, on where this race stands. To hear a lot of these instant polls, and they're never necessarily accurate. They're a reflection of just momentum at the moment, that they hit a chord with people. And I'm just wondering what you make of that, and more specifically what he had to say about the rest of you, the other candidates, where you were essentially, I think he used the term, bought and paid for.
Well, that's what raised my initial objection. Now, look, Neil, I've been in public service in this country on and off now for 15 of the last 21 years at great sacrifice to my family, both in terms of my time and my ability to make a living. And I have absolutely no regrets about it, nor does my family. But I have to tell you the truth. I got off the stage to Mary Pat, and she said, "Where's all that money that you were bought and paid for?" I'd like to see what that part of it is. This guy, and this is the irresponsible part of it. To say that someone like Doug Burgum, who built his own business himself and is a self-made guy, is bought and paid for. To say that Tim Scott, who's come from a single mother background, is bought and paid for, or that Mike Pence is bought and paid for, it's irresponsible. Now, look, it's the kind of thing, and he says he calls all the rest of us professional politicians. Let me tell you, the most professional politician to be scared of on that stage last night is a guy who would baselessly accuse all of us of having sold out the American people. I've never profited a dime off of my public service and never will. And for him to say it was unfair, and that's why I jumped in at that point, and I interrupted and called him an amateur. He can't even remember what he's plagiarizing any longer. He uses that phrase, a skinny guy with an odd name who doesn't belong on this stage. Well, it came right out of Barack Obama's acceptance speech at the Democratic National Convention. And he uses the very same phraseology. I mean, this is a guy who has, no principle.
So let
if
me
he's gonna,
ask you about that.
I didn't attack
Governor.
him last night.
I understand, and the back and forth continued. I am curious, though, what you made of the fact that Donald Trump wasn't there. Everyone was, ready to see you, take him on. You were sort of then surprisingly having to take on this new up-and-coming candidate. And you clearly had your moments, as did he. I'm just wondering, do you regret the fact that Donald Trump wasn't there and that this was an opportunity lost?
I don't regret it for me. I regret it for the voters of our party who didn't have an opportunity to be treated with respect by someone who's been fortunate enough to win that nomination twice. And at the bare minimum, for being honored not only to be our nominee twice, but to, for 4 years, be the President of the United States, for him to show such disrespect to the voters to not show up is sad for the voters of our party. But I'll tell you this, he's giving Joe Biden every excuse to not show up for debates in November. And that's not going to be good for our party, because if we got on a debate stage, whether it was me or one of the other candidates with Joe Biden, we'd do very, very well. But he's now set the precedent for not showing up at debates because you don't feel like it's in your political interest. And so, once again, Donald Trump establishing very dangerous precedents for our political system. And based on what, Neil? Purely his own personal interest. He does not put the interests of our party or our country first. He puts his own personal interests first.
But are you surprised,
and,
Governor? Are you surprised that he enjoys the support he does and criticism of him when it was heaped out, and Asa Hutchinson did the same, former Arkansas governor? A lot of boos greeted it. That your approach, even if some of your criticisms were valid, it's a party not across the board, Governor, that doesn't want to hear it. Do you think that is complicated? And your performance last night, bringing all of this up, and then the exchange, with Vivek, it indicates you're going to have an uphill battle trying to win them over, because they're a large chunk of the Republican Party.
Look, if you look at New Hampshire right now, 2/3 of the Republican voters polled do not want Donald Trump. And he is essentially an incumbent. He's the incumbent nominee of our party. If Joe Biden were at 34% anywhere, in any state in America right now, in his own party, there'd be breaking news on Fox about the disintegration of Joe Biden. Donald Trump's at 34%, and we're calling him unbeatable. So I don't understand how that works. He's not unbeatable. And if you're scared and reluctant to tell the truth because you're going to be booed by some segment of your own party, then you have no business being president of the United States, in my view. Because guess what? Sitting across from a murderous dictator like Vladimir Putin is going to be no fun either. Sitting across from a murderous dictator like President Xi of China, no fun. And some of the very difficult issues we have to deal with at home are no fun. But real leaders don't follow polls, Neil. They change them. That's what I did in New Jersey when I got reelected with 61% of the vote, won the Hispanic vote, won the female vote against the female candidate, and the first time around defeated a Democratic incumbent. That's the kind of leadership we need to win this election. Because, Neil, I want the voters out there to know who I know are smart listening to your program. If Joe Biden's reelected and if Donald Trump's nominated, he will be. Joe Biden's reelected, he's going to bring a Democratic House with him. That means we're going to have a packed Supreme Court. That means we're going to eliminate the filibuster, which means there'll be no way for Republicans for 2 years at least to stop any of the craziness coming from the far left of this country.
All right.
Think about the stakes here. That's going to be practically irreversible, the damage that's done to our country. I've proven I can beat a Democratic incumbent. Send a proven winner into the fight against Joe Biden, and believe me, I will beat him.
Governor Chris Christie, always good having you, sir. Thank you very much.
Neil, thanks for the time today. Appreciate it very much.
Be well.